collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, Larnaca Airport became the focus of world news earlier this week following the hijacking of an Egypt air flight which landed at Larnaca, causing major disruption.
Following a decision by the relevant government authorities, the operations at Larnaca International Airport have been temporarily suspended.
Several British passengers were on board the hijacked plane, and the British High Commissioner went to see them after they were released.
Well, obviously our first priority in this whole situation has been to work with and support the British nationals who've been caught up in this. I'm very pleased, relieved to say that there's a happy ending.
Local rally driver Panikos Polikarpou is working with the police to drill road safety into young drivers.
So I think we have to change a lot of the training before to get your license and examinations.
And the UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus, Espen Barth-Eider, is hopeful of a Cyprus solution, possibly by the end of the year.
It's not just around the corner, and I will defend that as a good thing, because we have, or you have, the Cypriots, the leaders, the negotiators, all the people who work with them, has the benefit of taking the time to get it right, to get this properly done. We should not waste time. And this is something we speak about, and by the way, where the leaders completely agree. We do not want to lose time, to waste time, but we want to use time in order to make sure that we do not only have a paper that can be signed and presented to a referendum. We do not even only want to help the leaders to have a deal that can get 2 yeses in the referendum. We want something that works.
The world's spotlight shone briefly on Cyprus earlier this week when a hijacked Egyptian airliner landed at Larnaca Airport. Parked at the end of the runway right by the perimeter fence separating the airport from the popular Mackenzie Beach area, negotiations with the hijacker, a 59-year-old Egyptian named Saif Eldin Mustafa, continued for about 6 hours, during which time the airport was closed. The airport operators gave out this information to the press.
Hermes Airports, operator of the 2 international airports of the Republic of Cyprus, have been in continuous communication and cooperation with the relevant authorities in Cyprus, the Cyprus government, in dealing with the incident involving an Egypt aircraft. Following a decision by the relevant government authorities, the operations at Larnaca International Airport have been temporarily suspended. Since this morning, all the relevant actions have been taken to deal with the situation and the return of the airport to normal operations as soon as possible. So far, 8 flights have been diverted to Paphos Airport, and this may be deemed necessary with other scheduled flights. 2 flights have been diverted to other airports outside Cyprus, and 4 flights have been cancelled. Hermes Airports has made arrangements so that there is a continuous update of the flight schedule on the Hermes Airports website, which is www.hermesairports.com. At the same time, we recommend to the traveling public to consult directly with their airlines or travel agents for further updates. We express our regret for the inconvenience caused to the public, and we hope that the situation will be resolved the soonest. I would also like to inform you that if we have to face further delays, it's more possible that we'll have to cancel more flights.
A spokesman for Hermes Airports speaking to the press during the hijacking at Larnaca this week. When the last passengers, including several Britons, were finally released, the British High Commissioner went to the airport, and I caught up with him after he'd spoken to them.
Well, obviously our first priority in this whole situation has been to work with and support the British nationals who've been caught up in this. I'm very pleased, relieved to say that there's a happy ending and all the passengers, crew are safe, including the 3 British nationals and 1 dual national. And I've had the chance to speak with one of them, and as I said, very pleased the situation has come to such a satisfactory ending. The passenger I spoke with was very relieved, as indeed were all the passengers.
Can you confirm whether or not there was indeed a suicide vest and a threat to blow up the plane?
As I said, the investigation is still at an early stage, and it wouldn't be right for me to comment or offer any details on that. As I said, our priority here has been to help and support the British nationals, so I came to do that, and a consular team are here from the High Commission to give further help and support to the British nationals here. We want to help them, get them safely back on their way as soon as we can, and we facilitated them having contact with their families. As I said, I'm very pleased and relieved there's a happy ending.
British High Commissioner Rick Todd.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
Local rally driver Panikos Polikarpou from the Psaltis rally team is working with young people and the police to try and get road safety standards among young drivers in Cyprus on a higher level.
As we know, we're working with very fast speeds and during the rally, so we're very experienced on this situation, and we learn about the danger, and we want to pass to the youth what is the danger of the speed. And if people speak about the speed, but is very experienced on this, it's a different hero for them. So this is what we're trying to do with the police.
When you started out getting involved in rallying and you got your driver's license, were you tempted to speed?
To be honest, because I was working as a professional on the rallying, I learned what is the rallying in the stage and what is the road driving. So I am trying to be the best driver in the roads, which the best driver in the roads is who use the codes. It's not the fast driver.
So when you meet these young people like you did recently at the road safety event you did in Limassol, what do they say to you? Are they aware of the fact that it isn't clever to just freak out when you're on public roads?
Well, I saw the youth people doesn't look at the point of road safety. They said, okay, again, road safety, police. We don't want to learn about that, and this is make me sad. But the other people, old people, they came and asked, what are you doing here? And we explain what we're trying to do. And it's a big problem with the youth in road accidents.
So how can you, as a rally driver, who a lot of these young people look up to, and you're their hero, how can you persuade them that breaking the law is not smart?
First of all, I show them what is going to happen. So people, they don't understand what is going to happen if you're going fast on the roads, how many dangers you can find when you're driving. So that's why they're going fast and break the law. And so I want to show them what is going to happen. And people, they used to think that never going to happen to me. So I want to show them that it's every time it's going to happen. So you have to to avoid before it's going to happen.
Do you think there are any changes that we need to make either to driving lessons or to the driving test that will get these people thinking more carefully about responsibility behind the wheel of a car?
Well, as I saw from many countries in Europe, to get the license is more difficult than Cyprus. So I think we have to change a lot of the training before to get your license and examinations. And we want to make the people understand more about the car, not just driving in two roads as you know and you get your license. You need to learn everything, what is going to happen, which is the dangers, not just the driving.
And of course you need to learn to think ahead. We've been talking to rally driver Panicos Polikarpou from the Psaltis Eneos rally team about his work on road safety, which he undertakes along with the team and the Cyprus police.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
Greek Cypriots joined Turkish Cypriots last week to hear the UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus, Espen Barth Ida, give a briefing about the ongoing reunification negotiations. He apparently is hopeful that we could see a Cyprus solution possibly by the end of the year. Addressing the gathering, this is what he said.
It is absolutely obvious to me that I am dealing with on a very frequent basis two leaders who want to solve the Cyprus problem and who want to be the leaders from the two communities who can make this happen. That has led to an enormous amount of work that's already done. We just counted, just to give a numerical example, the two leaders have met in the formal setting of negotiators 25 times. They, of course, met many other times as well, but I'm now counting the real formal settings. They are excellent negotiators. Andreas Mavroyiannis and Öztil Nami have met formally 95 times so far, and 95 times on 9 months, that means that's quite a lot of days a week. And they spend full days working with each other and with my team, with me when I'm here, and in the meantime they prepare and lead all the other work. So there's an enormous effort. Now, numerically, it's not that relevant, it's just to illustrate the effort there. But I would like to highlight here that beyond the people you see on television and so on, there are several hundred people in almost 30 working groups or technical committees of different sorts about all sorts of issues. Hundreds of people who have met hundreds of times, if you combine all of these, working on all the different aspects of a Cyprus solution, of a Cyprus settlement. And this process, as any process, it had better days and not so good days maybe, but there hasn't really been any crisis of the talks, and that's remarkable. I cannot really think of a comparable process where you've had 9 months of continuous progress in the right direction. I'm not saying that in order to suggest that a solution is just around the corner. I'm quite frequently criticized for being too optimistic. And as a lot of newspapers have made a big deal of this very negative element that I'm too optimistic about this. I'm not too optimistic. I'm realistically optimistic. But I also want to be very clear in saying we still have work to do. It's not just around the corner. And I will defend that as a good thing. Because we have, or you have, the Cypriots, the leaders, the negotiators, all the people who work with them, after all, and reflect on that, has the benefit of taking the time to get it right, to get this properly done. We should not waste time, and this is something we speak about, and by the way, where the leaders completely agree. We do not want to lose time, to waste time, but we want to use time in order to make sure that we do not only have a paper that can be signed and presented to a referendum. We do not even only want to help the leaders to have a deal that can get 2 yeses in the referendum. We want something that works. And we want something that works in all its aspects, that there is not a something we forgot about, something that was hidden inside, let's say, a pseudo-agreement, which seems good on paper, but doesn't work in reality. So that's why I will want to share with you, this is continuing to move in a positive, constructive direction, but there's still work to do, and it's quite logical, and actually on this front quite normal as negotiations go, that in the early days you will focus on low-hanging fruits. So you will get the impression that things move fast, because you're after all dealing with things that have been talked about, negotiated before, and where you were not that far away from an agreement on certain chapters, certain elements. So with goodwill and some creativity, you can kind of fill out the blanks. What in a sense has been much more important is venturing into areas that have hardly ever been covered in the proper way, and particularly not in the way that they're covered now. That is more cumbersome, but in many ways also more important. And while I'm sure I'm happy to take questions, and you can ask any question you like, but I will not, neither in my speech nor afterwards, reveal sort of exactly where we are, what are we doing right now, because that's the job of your elected leaders. It's not my job, and I want to be loyal to that. They decide, and they are free to choose and decide how much and how little they want to say, and it's not my job to sort of say, oh, well, I'll tell you the real truth, what we did yesterday, what we'll do tomorrow. I will not do that, so I'll talk about the broader context in which this is happening. But I have one thing which I wanted to emphasize particularly. We're talking about people who see opportunity over problems, who see future over past. And that's, I think, something that is very important in the Cyprus problem, because some of you heard me speak about this before, and what I'm saying now is an observation, empathic observation of something which I fully identify with, because I totally understand it, given where the communities in Cyprus both come from, which is that the past is difficult. The present is always also difficult. Future is actually easier. And every time, in almost any context, normal people in the street, different groups I meet, up to leaders level, when you actually are able to speak about the future as the future, we find solutions. Or at least it's possible to see solutions. I'm not saying finding, agreeing. But if the discussion about the future is infused by past, it's more difficult. And what I'm saying here is not that I believe any society neither can nor should forget the past. You actually do need to understand your past, but also the past of other people, and what is the shared past and what is the divisive past. But if the past becomes the enemy of moving forward, you will have a problem. And in any conflict society, violent or not, but any society with a kind of conflictual identity, that is a perennial problem, that the past keeps holding people back from moving forward to the future. We've put a lot of emphasis in our work on what we broadly can call the economic aspects of a settlement. And I have sort of one main thing I wanted to share with you today, and I think this is the right group and the right context. I really would think it would be helpful if people stopped talking about the so-called cost of a solution. The whole idea of a cost of a solution is a misconception. It's a fundamental misconception. What is costly is the non-solution. What costs money is all the opportunity, all the money that's lost because of division. That's costly. That's every investment that does not happen because of the geopolitical risk. And I know in a lot of boards, outside of Cyprus, say Cyprus would have been interesting, but isn't it divided? Isn't there something about Greeks and Turks and the neighborhood and problems and non-recognition, whatever it is? Well, let's go somewhere else. That's costly. It's all the shipping industry that could have been based here and be the main regional trade link to everywhere, but had to flag out because you can't go to Turkish ports. It's the young people that leave the island because they don't really see as much future opportunity. That's lost productivity. It's the trade that you're not having. It's the parts of the island that cannot properly trade with the European market, other parts of the island which cannot properly trade with neighboring markets in plural in the neighborhood. This is cost. Solution is opportunity. Solution brings money to the island. That said, of course it's true that you need an upfront investment to get over the initial hurdle. So yes, there's money involved, but solid evidence and more evidence is coming out of the work that's been done by economists from Cyprus and international economists, that the solution over time will pay for itself. What it actually means is that for all these reasons and many other reasons, agglomeration effect, economy of scale, effectiveness in general, all these effects combined, it's very likely to create a growth trajectory which is significantly higher than that of the two divided communities. And in a relatively short number of years, there will actually be more extra growth than the so-called cost. So could we please stop talking about the cost of a solution as if solving the problem is a problem? Solving the problem is good for, at least, I think in many respects, but definitely in a very material form for the economy of Cyprus. And money is, of course, for everyone. And we're talking about, this is job opportunities for young people staying rather than leaving, believing in the future. In that context, I'm extremely happy about the two leaders, Anastasiadis and McKinsey, who very early on in this process took the initiative to authorize me and my office to work with the international financial institutions, with the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, also with the European Commission, the European Central Bank. And what I can tell you, which we should all be rejoicing, is that the level of engagement from these international institutions is unprecedented anywhere. It's of course unprecedented in Cyprus, never happened before at this level. And this is very constructive work. This is work supporting a leader-led process. They're not coming here to tell us what to do or to tell the Cypriots what to do. They're coming here with advice as solicited by leaders. They're coming with the advice they're asked to give. And they send some of their best people because they believe this is a very unique opportunity in the world to get these things right. And it's unprecedented in Cypriot history, I know that for a fact, but it's actually rather unprecedented globally to have that level of support and attention. That's something that should be noted. It's major and it's very, very significant. As you know, the goal of the talks is already well known. Basically, what they're seeking, what the leaders are seeking, is a bizonal, bicommunal federation with full respect of the principles of which the EU is built, and all these words that we know which are very essential, in which we remind ourselves about every day. But I really want to convey a couple of extremely important observations. We are negotiating a genuine federation. We're not negotiating a confederation, a weak confederation of two de facto states under the formal auspices of some kind of federation. And not because one side has been forced to do this, but because the current political leadership on both sides wants exactly that. That's their starting point. That's what they want to see, which means one single sovereignty to the world. It's one state. Yes, constituent states, as Germany has Länder, or as the United States of America has many states, but there's one country, Cyprus. One country with one economy, with citizens who are citizens of whatever it will be called. I will not mention a name because that's again a topic but it will probably include the word federal, and it will end by Cyprus. And I think for daily use, you will all going to call it Cyprus anyway, where it's called. I'm actually living in a country called Confederazione Helvetica. Most of you don't know that because you call it Switzerland. So that one thing is the formal name, and the other thing is what you actually call it. Very important, and I think these are things I really want to highlight today. This economic aspect, but that's just one thing. And the other one is it's a real European country. So what we want to do is that this federal, bicommunal, bizonal federation, with a highlight on federation, is going to be sort of fully embedded in the European Union in all that entails, which means European acquis will be rolled out all over the country, and that's already happening. There's a significant effort going on right now where the future Turkish Cypriot constituent state, to be very precise here, the future Turkish Cypriot constituent state is being prepared for everything that comes with European acquis. And the people who are contributing to that are the Turkish Cypriot themselves, assistance of the Greek Cypriots, of course, the European Union institutions, but also World Bank and other organizations working on that. That's not a small thing. And these things take time anywhere. Remember, when a country becomes the EU member, well, the Greek Cypriots in the audience remember that from when the Republic, these things they're not necessarily controversial, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get things right. For instance, you need, some of them are highly practical things like phytosanitary regulations. Sounds boring, but that's why I can be sure that when you, or almost certain at least, that when you buy food from another European country, it is up to the standards that you expect, so you can have a food market, right? Because if you're not really certain about that, you would probably try to stick to your own food and not buy anybody else's food. But how do you get there? Well, you have certain standards for how you do food production and how you do, how a slaughterhouse is, built, and, So all these different things have to be implemented either on day one or at a defined time after a transition period. This work is happening, and it takes a lot of effort, and a lot of people are involved in it, and it's moving forward. But it's one of the examples where I say, obviously, still quite some work to do.
He went on to say that the Committee on Education was doing important work, and he emphasised that Cypriots needed to ask themselves whether they were ready for reunification and all that it entailed.
And my concluding point now, because I don't want to speak all the time, I want to listen to you, and you don't have to come a question, you can come a comment or whatever, is I think it's incredibly important that civil society, broadly defined, be that women's group or youth groups or elderly or people who have fled from somewhere to somewhere else, or religious leaders or non-religious, whatever it is, civil society actually asks themselves that question and see, what is my role in this? I'm not the one to answer that. I'm not Cypriot. I don't have a vote. I have a little bit of influence because I'm chairing the talks. But when you have a referendum, you need to be a citizen of Cyprus, and the two communities will have a referendum, and almost everybody in this room will have one vote. I don't. That's your decision what's going to happen at that time. But the question is, what would we do if that happened, and what should we do now in order to prepare for that new reality, which I think is a remarkably fascinating thing, but also a big thing to reflect on and think about and deal with. I think I'll stop there and just say great to be here again, great to see you, old friends, new friends, and more than willing to have an exchange with those who would like to say something to me or ask a question.
I asked Mr. Ida whether there would be plenty of time after a settlement agreement is drawn up for citizens to study the proposals and discuss them before they were asked to vote in a referendum.
There's clearly a need for some time to be able to explain, discuss, ask, answer, criticize, applaud, agree, disagree, what comes out of this. You cannot jump from a settlement to a referendum too quickly. And I think that's, although I will have nothing to share on a bit specific time, but I think there's also based on past experiences that needs sort of decent time, so that those discussions can be held and that people can actually see what the whole thing is, and where there is actually a text or texts in plural that you can read. So the statement it says this. Well, no, it's actually here. It doesn't say this. It says something else. It's a completely different way. So that's understood, I think, and I think we will all cooperate to make sure that time is available, and that of course will have an influence on when we're finally there, because first you have to come to the settlement, then you need that time, and then you'll have the referendum. It's a very, very important point. Now, of course, there's some work that's been done also by, both civil society and some media outlets that's already now discussing things that will obviously be the case, because it's not all unknowns. It's going to be a federation, so start thinking what the federation is. You don't need to wonder. It will be a federation. I told you it's going to be a European country, EU member. That answers many questions, right? You don't have to make it too complicated. We also know that the outcome on security has to be, whatever the exact detail is, it has to be such that both communities feel safe. Not only the day of referendum, but in the long run. That requires, something has to change. So, you already know this, even if you don't know exactly what's where and what will be in which chapter. So while I'm saying that there's still work, you kind of know the parameters. Read the joint declaration. And I'm simply saying the joint declaration is basically the Wikipedia article of the coming federation already written. The short version is there. we're filling in the details.
The UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on Cyprus, Espen Barth-Eider, speaking to a bicommunal gathering last week. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.